and then you will get this recording after. All right. Anyway, welcome to Road Recovery. Alana, tell you.
Okay. I was going to say good morning. I'm so used to starting my groups and saying good morning. It is not morning. It is nighttime. It is Thanksgiving week for those of you who are in the States. So as we were talking about which topic to start with tonight, the topic of gratitude in relationship to recovery was brought up. And I thought this was a really good and interesting topic because gratitude is one of those things that sometimes gets used in a really helpful, healthy way, and other times gets used in kind of a toxic way. There's a term called spiritual bypassing. If you've heard of this before, wonderful. If you haven't, it's this basic idea of when people are trying to be helpful, they give you information, or they give you a phrase that bypasses your current situation and tries to kind of push you along to the end result. They could be phrases as everything happens for a reason, or it's all in God's timing, or just have faith, or at least fill in the blank. And when you are in the thick of it, sometimes, often, these statements aren't helpful. I remember when I had a miscarriage and some of the statements people gave of trying to be helpful. Well, at least you have other kids, or at least you found out when you were only 12 weeks and not when you were 8 months. Things like that. It bypassed my current situation of the real pain that I was in then, and was trying to kind of hurry me to see that silver lining. So with gratitude, sometimes we see gratitude used as one of these spiritual bypassing. Gratitude can be used as, okay, well, just be grateful, just be happy. And gratitude has some real awesome benefits. But if we use it as a tool for spiritual bypassing, where we're just skipping over the real lived experience and not meeting people where we're at, it can be used in a toxic way. And I give all of this as a disclaimer that before I go into gratitude and give like a mini little lesson on gratitude and why we need it so much, whether we're doing a recovery, a healing recovery, or a recovery from sexual misbehaviors, gratitude is going to be so essential. But this is not to be used as a tool against each other or a tool to shame ourselves. We don't want to use it to bypass and just try to ignore or resist or skim over any real feelings that we are having that do need some space and do need processed. So with that disclaimer, Luke.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
And I might have been chatting with somebody in the chat, so if you explain this, then my bad. Spiritual bypassing, did you define what that meant?
I gave a very layman's term of spiritual bypassing, but I would love to hear how you would describe that, Luke. How would you describe spiritual bypassing?
It's like I don't want to dig in and figure it out, so I'll just let God handle it. Somebody that doesn't understand the journey of recovery, they're like, if you just have enough faith, if you just want to, if you just want to become sober bad enough, it's just like that card that is played for people that don't really understand the work that's done and in this process.
Well, and it's interesting because usually it's an attempt to be helpful. So when somebody spiritually bypasses, or there's a whole movement around positivity, which positivity is wonderful. But when we're using it to bypass their experience and try to get them to the end quicker, a lot of times the reason we do that, the person who's doing it, is because we're in pain, because their pain makes us uncomfortable and we don't know what to do with it. And so then we are trying to bypass them through it faster. So I see this happen sometimes with couples in recovery, that there is this little bit of like trying to push their partner through faster and not making space for the real lived experience that's happening right now. So With gratitude. Gratitude is one of these tools that does not get utilized enough, I believe. Gratitude should be one of our things that's part of our dailies. Again, whether you're on the betrayed or the betrayer side of it, this needs to be something that we start implementing every single day. When we are implementing gratitude, it literally changes our brain. From the book, Focus, the Hidden Driver of Excellence. I took this quote from it because I thought this was really good. They talked about the brain and how we get this heightened prefrontal cortex when we do an MRI scan. When we are practicing gratitude regularly, it lights up the parts of our brains that enhances our mental focus, enhances our creative thinking, our cognitive flexibility, and faster processing. So the quote from the book, he said, positive emotions actually widen our span of attention, and it also changes our perception and focus on more of the we instead of the me. So when he's talking about the positive emotions, he's talking about from gratitude, the positive emotions that we get and the way this part of our brain lights up, those neurotransmitters get activated. The reason I read this, it says, I'm going to read this again. It also changes our perception and focuses more on the we instead of the me. So when we have years of addiction or sexual acting out, as part of that to protect either the addiction or the sexual acting out, we tend to start getting a really selfish mindset. We get more and more and more of this. Think about me, how to protect me. What do I need here? And so that me mindset, as we build that selfish mindset, or as that naturally starts to be created to protect the addiction and also to protect ourselves, we move into more and more of a negative brain, and more of that part of our brain starts to shut down. And so when we're trying to heal and when we're trying to start to recover, it is so essential that we start moving out of that selfish mindset and more into, like they said, the we instead of the me. So gratitude is one of those pieces that can actually help start rewiring our brain. Not just like it feels good, let's do it, but there is a literally, because of neuroplasticity, which is amazing that we can have, that our brain can change, we can get stronger and our brain can change by building in this gratitude every single day.
Alana, somebody said, does that mean not to try to be positive when someone feels like crap?
I'll come back to that.
Okay.
I'm going to talk about how to balance the needing to feel what we need to feel, and also like when we get caught in spins. I'm going to, such a good question. Hold on to that one. Okay. I'm going to come back to that. There was a study in 2008, and I'm going to read this. It said gratitude causes synchronized activation in multiple brain regions and lights up part of the brain's reward pathways and the hypothalamus. Okay, so just that part, I'm going to keep reading, but it molts up multiple brain regions and part of the brain's reward pathways. So if we have addiction and the brain has had its reward pathways completely screwed with, part of healing them and rebuilding them is going to be through gratitude. And the hypothalamus. In short, gratitude can burst neurotransmitters, serotonin, which is the neurotransmitter that makes us feel really good and nice and calm, and activate the brainstem to produce dopamine, which is that feel-good chemical. So again, if we have addiction, we have where those neurotransmitters have been completely hijacked. And I'm not going to give a mini lesson on addiction. You can look them up, just neurotransmitters and addiction, and it will talk about how they get so haywire. But another way that we can start rebuilding them to healthy levels and get them activated in healthy ways can be through gratitude. So, okay, this is where it gets tricky. And this is where this question comes in. That's so good. And Luke, jump in here with your thoughts after I talk about this piece. But when we are really starting to work recovery, you start learning, like, we have to learn how to feel our emotions. So often we're like, push away, especially with addiction. That's kind of the essence of addiction is we don't want to, we're not dealing with what's really coming up. So we're numbing out. And so it's going to be essential that we make space for our emotions. But what I see happen is we tend to do this pendulum swing where we go over here and we are shutting down, ignoring, not feeling, or, well, I'm speaking right now to the person who's betrayed or had sexual addiction. So they're, as
Wait,
they,
which one are you talking to?
the person who has betrayed their partner. So they tend to, once they start learning, I got to feel feelings, they tend to swing over here and they start feeling all the feelings, but then it's like this overflowing of feelings and they get the swinging back and forth. I see this in betrayed partners too, this pendulum swinging back and forth. And we want to let that pendulum swing until we can find this nice, healthy middle ground. But gratitude is, we don't want to bypass the need to feel those feelings that we need to feel. But what we can do is we can so easily get caught in this negative spiral, whether it's intrusive thoughts or ruminating thoughts, or for those who are betrayed, the PTSD that comes with those memories and the rumination of what they did, and or why don't they love me? How could they do this to me? Why? Well, sometimes we get so caught that gratitude can be a beautiful tool to help shift our energy. In CBT therapy, and actually a lot of coaches use the same model, but it comes from CBT therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. There is this idea that every thought that we have, a thought will elicit an emotion, and then the emotion elicits a behavior that comes. So a thought always has an emotion. So if I'm going to start thinking really sad thoughts, I'm actually going to chemically create feelings in my body that go along with those thoughts. And if I start thinking really happy, positive thoughts, while it's not going to magically make my feelings or all my problems go away, it will bring up some positive feelings in my body. But it's not that simple that we can't just go, okay, my life sucks and I'm just going to be happy. Just, positive vibes only. Well, no, we are so much more complex than that. But we can't also pendulum swing the other way and just throw it all out the window either. It still is chemically true that our thoughts elicit the feelings, and the feelings elicit behavior. That's still true. So the balance is going to come in of when we start building this gratitude into our dailies, we start rewiring our brains and we start having more joy in our life. I was reading a study and they took like 300 participants who were just starting therapy, and they put them into different control groups, and one control group wrote gratitude letters. They didn't even have to send them to anyone, but they wrote gratitude letters for 3 weeks, and the other one didn't. And the long lasting benefit of those who wrote the letters for the 3 weeks, even 12 weeks later, 3 months later, were significantly higher in their well-being. That made such a difference to be able to incorporate that into their other work. So, how can you actually do this? How can you actually build this into your dailies? And what does that look like? Doing a gratitude journal. I remember the first week that everything came out with Luke, I could not sleep. I was up all night. And I had this thought that I needed to just start writing a gratitude. And I was like, when I sat down, I'm like, I have nothing to be grateful for. Nothing. And I just sat there in front of my stupid journal with my stupid pen. This is what my head's doing. Like, this is all stupid. And my first day, my list was, I am thankful for electricity because I'm looking around and I'm in a lit up room, and I'm grateful for heat. And my brain wanted to go, I'm grateful for my husband. I was like, I'm not grateful for him. was like, I'm mad that that thought even came up. And I'm like, okay, stick with it. And my list that first day was pretty dang generic. It had nothing to do with my family, nothing emotional. It was just strictly like electricity, food, a car that drives. But each day I started writing more and more and more. And I found myself sleeping more. And this is what I would do each night before I go to bed. And that just helped calm my mind and it helped me sleep. So writing a gratitude journal, you can even just do bullet points. It does not have to be fancy, but that starts shifting your energy.
Can I
Yeah,
comment?
please.
So we actually talk about this a lot in our 180 group. And we talk about, we call it the ETEB tool, which is first of all, recognizing that triggers happen, or they happen for our spouse too, and for the betrayed. And we go, okay, so behind a trigger, something happens, which is you have a thought that comes after a trigger. And then you have an emotion that happens that follows your thought. And we identify it. We go, okay, what was the thought? What was the emotion? And then we go, okay, that emotion actually leads to another thought, which leads to emotion, which leads to a thought. And it becomes so big and so intense and so fast and so strong that eventually I behave, I do something, I act. And it might not be out of my values, okay? But I'm gonna act. I'm gonna show up and I'm gonna do something, especially when it spins really fast. And then we talk, us as a group, we talk about, okay, what's our human part of our experience to do, is because this experience is called a neural pathway that's well worn and traveled, that happens in our brain. These thought patterns and these emotions and these feelings, they've been, for addicts, or those who suffer from addiction, go really, it's just the same thing over and over again. It's the same pathway. So we go, okay, so if I'm going to be, if I basically turn into animal type behavior or survival type behavior, what do I do? Is I got to take my human part of my brain back, which is, that means I actually start to identify the emotion or the feeling. I go, oh, okay, I know that. That's just think mine. That's loneliness. That's loneliness, or that's overwhelm, or that's boredom. I know that feeling. And I actually sit with that feeling. I actually kind of like try to slow it down and go, what is that? Because I'm not used to doing that. I'm not used to just noticing my feeling and going, what is it? What's interesting is the moment that I notice, the moment I start to change the path that I'm on, I start to go, oh, that's anger. All right, well, why am I angry? A different thought has to follow, which is just curiosity, which is just confusion, which leads to a different emotion, which leads to a different thought, which then turns into a different behavior. So, okay, Alana, I can tell
Well,
you.
I was going to say, so many of these thoughts we don't even recognize we're having. A lot of these thoughts have been happening so automatically or happen so quickly that they're subconscious. We don't even recognize that we're running off of these thoughts. So that process you're talking about of like slowing down, getting curious, so we can figure out what thoughts are driving our actions and behaviors and what thoughts are triggering the emotion is really essential to part of our recovery work.
And what's interesting is I met with a man earlier in a session, and he was, unfortunately, his marriage got to a place where it's going the divorce route. And because of what's coming up right now, he was so angry, so angry. And I know that might trigger some people in here, just the thought of all of that. And what was interesting is my goal in that space was to provide space for that anger, because it was an appropriate place. Now, notice I said an appropriate place for anger to be was in a session with me, which is to go, what's coming up? What's going on? Like, what are you feeling? And just allow that to be. Now, please, I said appropriate place. Recognize that I said anger has an appropriate place because the emotion isn't bad. And what was interesting is I said, because this guy's a very gentle, he's like a very gentle, like giant, even though he's made some poor choices like I have. And I said, that anger part, I hope that at the outcome, it doesn't consume you, but it's appropriate now because of what you're going through. So let's just talk about it. And you could see he's like, anger really isn't appropriate. I don't like that comment, and he couldn't even really see the anger in himself. So we just sat with it. And then what happened is naturally that emotion flowed into a new emotion. And that emotion was sadness. And it was tear. It was tear ridden. And I think it was so, so beautiful. Such a sacred experience I got to be a part of, because this man was so courageous and so strong to sit with his anger in an appropriate way, to have it evolve with new thoughts and challenge it to where he could come through with sadness, which is eventually going to lead to something else, which I believe will be hope, which I believe will be feeling empowered, and other things. And I don't know, Alana, I didn't mean to sidetrack at all, but this is what was coming up thinking about this stuff.
No, I love that you brought this up because all of these are so intertwined. It's funny because in my brain, I was going to go, okay, I'm just going to give a quick 5 minutes on gratitude and then we'll jump into all of the questions. But what you're talking about, like the spiritual bypassing, that can be a whole in-depth piece of it in and of itself. Then you have the gratitude and the need for building that into your dailies and into your recovery and your healing. And then the emotions. We can't take this gratitude. We have to make space for the gratitude, but we can't take the gratitude and use the gratitude to then skim over or numb out the feelings. And so it's really a lot of this work is a balancing act, because anything in extremes becomes unhealthy. And so we do want to have, I know people who take that gratitude and don't do the work you're talking about, Luke. And it's just like, well, everything happens for a reason. But then they're having all of these, trying to think of the right word, consequences, because they're not actually making space and dealing with the feelings that are coming up. So we don't want to use gratitude to bypass, but there's such beautiful benefits that come when we make space for this. And gratitude is a choice. I remember one time, Luke and I, we had so many hard conversations. We still have hard conversations, but we had been on a really long drive and we had hours of a hard conversation and we had kind of wrapped it up. We had done some good processing, but both of us just felt so heavy. And I don't remember, Luke, if you started this or if I started this, but one of us said, okay, we're going to do gratitude and we're going to do the alphabet. So one of us would start. And so if like Luke's letter was A, Luke would come up with something he was grateful that started with an A. So Luke, what would your A be? I'm not going to do the whole alphabet. Don't worry.
You're just trying to get me to say it, Alana.
Oh, thank you. And then if I did B, I would say like, I am really grateful for when I have 5 kids, when they were babies and I got to just hold them and love them and snuggle them. I'm also grateful they're not babies. So grateful, but I am grateful for that period.
I could tell you meant that.
What's that?
I could tell you meant that.
Yeah. And then Luke would do C and I would do D. And by the time that we got to the end of the alphabet, our energy had shifted. Now, did we magically feel better and all of a sudden we were like skipping and singing and cuddling? No, but it really did change the way we were feeling, because I want to say it took us a good like 30 minutes, but it really shifted our energy into something that we were ready then to keep going and go about with our day. So
that was cute. You said skip, sing, and cuddle. I don't think I've ever heard that before.
I'm trying to think of things that we were not in a place to probably be doing, but
could you comment on this one though? It says, I'm guessing you can spiritually bypass yourself, right? Dismissing your own feelings and process.
Say that one more time.
I'm guessing you can spiritually bypass yourself, right? Dismissing your own feelings and process.
100% you can. Yeah, you absolutely can. And I love that question, because that's That right there is bringing in that self-awareness, right? Other people can do it to us, but if we've had this happen to us our whole life, then probably your default will be to do that. So recognizing when that's happening. So gratitude journal each day, ABCs of gratitude. Sometimes at the dinner table with our kids, we'll do good news, bad news for each day. So it's helping them. One other thought too. I was talking about this in one of my betrayal trauma groups. We were talking about gratitude, and we were talking about that sometimes bringing in that gratitude when you're in so much pain feels almost like you're betraying yourself, or it feels like I can't be happy because so much bad is happening around me, or I can't be happy because I'm in so much pain. Like it feels wrong to be happy. And just in those places, I want to just say, I get it. I've so been there. And letting that joy in doesn't mean we have to kick out any other real lived experience we're having, but we can let joy sit side by side. So the joy or the happiness or the gratitude can sit next to the fear, or it can sit next to the sadness, or it can sit next to the anger, and both can be there. Learning how to make room for more of that is a really healthy skill. And it's okay that it takes a little bit. It's okay that that's effort.
Can we just sit on that one for a second? Like, I just want to provide so much space for that almost feeling contradicting emotions can sit in the same space. And that's okay. That's not abnormal. That can be appropriate. And it can be confusing. Holy moly. Like,
yeah,
so
absolutely contradictory feelings can sit side by side.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tell clients, I learn to embrace the and. I don't feel this or this. I feel this and this and this and this. And all of those things can sit side by side.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to finish really quick this list. Gratitude journal each day. Notice how you start the day. Are your first thoughts negative? Are your first thoughts gratitude? Try to build in your gratitude as quick as you can when you first wake up. Start your energy and your tone on the right day. Build in more meditation and stillness. Games at dinner. I kind of talked about that with your kids. You can build in little gratitude games, can help build that in them if you have kids. And the last one is practice giving gratitude as a gift to others. As you give that to a gift to others, that's a way that you can serve them. And when we serve, that puts us, when we are doing nice things for other people, that puts us out of our own head and gets us more into a place that gratitude can be built within us. Now, I know for betrayed partners, it's okay if you're in a season that you can't do that. But for those who have struggled with sexual addiction or sexual acting out, this getting outside of yourself and helping others and serving others, whether it be your spouse, your children, your friends, finding healthy ways to take care of other people and not think about you is going to be really important in rewiring the brain, and also will make space for more gratitude, and gratitude makes space for more service. So that's all I got on gratitude.
I got something, maybe it's not gratitude related, but it's around the spiritual bypassing stuff. So can we talk about that? Okay. So I think we might have emotionally hijacked some people, which I could totally appreciate with the spiritual bypassing thing, and not in a bad way. What I mean by that is we had a couple people actually commented on the whole, so here's the deal. Choose Recovery Services is not necessarily affiliated with spiritual concepts, is like, okay, this is how we tackle recovery, which is only through God, like certain steps do, but we provide space for people that are in a good place with God, maybe unsure, and just it's not their space for their recovery. So we're going to provide space for all of it. For those who are bringing up their like spiritual bypassing related to their faith, one of the things that's come up in the conversation, a byproduct is, all right, what if we have people that have told us to lay stuff at God's feet and let them, and do that. And one of the chats back and forth were like, well, how has that worked for you? Has that helped? And the comment back was, not so much, and trying to find some, this is not exactly their words, but trying to find some peace around it, or trying to find how to move on or solve some of the problems. So I just want to draw in, it's provided a lot of peace for me in my faith and my journey with my faith. That's constantly on its own. I'm constantly on that journey, which is a quote out of Worthy of Her Trust, which is, I don't pray my way out of something I behaved my way into. So I just recognize the fact that my God was a God of miracles, but I also recognize that when it comes to sexual addiction, I don't necessarily just get that miracle as everything gets fixed and gets better. I still allow myself to include my God in the experience, but recognize that I crawled down into a hole, and my responsibility is to change behavior while including him in the experience, to rewire my brain. So, and I have a lot of times that this is an interesting conversation, because it can be an empowering thing for some, because it's like, well, that's nice, because I just felt so spiritually inept because I pray really hard and I ask for miracles and nothing would ever happen. And now that you're telling me that God's still going to be a part of the journey, but I've still got to show up and do stuff, and the miracle will happen as I work my process. That was very helpful to them. The other ones felt it was very almost sacrilegious, for lack of a better word, of like, well, no, it's just, I should just be able to, it's my lack of faith. So wherever you're at in that, the point of the spiritual bypassing is to not work a part of the journey, because I'm using faith to just fill in that gap for me. And other people can do that to us, or we can do that to ourselves. So just develop some awareness around that, and some clarity of what that might look like, of what other people are doing to us or saying to us, or what we're doing to ourselves, and just spend some time processing around it and see if that's a stuck point for us. Seeing if we're stuck there, and that might be a part of our recovery, of just wanting something really bad to happen, but recognize that we're not necessarily doing anything about it, or something different than that. So anyway, just wanted to comment on that. Alana, do you have any comments on that too?
The analogy that kind of comes to my mind is, I think with God is this all-knowing, all-powerful being, and I'm just having an earthly human experience. And I think of when my kids were little, 4 or 5 years old, and they're learning how to tie their shoes. And this 4-year-old is like, I can do it. I can do it. And they're like making knots, and it's getting worse. And I can do it. I can do it. And if they come to me, I can do it for them. I can. But where we really have success is when we work together, when I can teach them and go slow, but they have to some degree, be willing to put their foot before me, stop fighting me. If you've ever had a 4-year-old, it's like, I got it. Stop fighting me. Stop trying to just do everything yourself, and let's work together. And then together I can teach you how you can tie your shoe, and then you will get it and you'll be just fine. But there's this process of the surrender of them coming. And that's kind of how I see that. And this is how I've reframed that, is I've reframed it as there is this level of surrender, but there's still work that they have to learn, and they have to grow, and they have to, yes, there's a surrender, but then there's also work that has to be done. And that to me is where it comes together beautifully, is yes, we release, and yes, we stop fighting, but it doesn't mean that we now become helpless and we're not empowered. We still are putting that effort. We are still learning, we're still growing, and there's still frustration in that process, right? It doesn't magically just all come together, and it feels great because we've been able to put it at God's feet. There's a process there.
What about the betrayed side of the journey? Were you speaking to that right there?
That can go for either side.
Okay.
I was thinking more sexual addiction with that, but that absolutely could go either side.
Yeah. Want to tackle the questions?
Well, one came in on, can you use a spiritual bypass on yourself because you have a fear of changing? Yeah. Their denial. Okay. I'm going to see if I can find it while Luke's talking. I have this sheet on denial of all the different ways that denial can show up. And it's pretty crazy extensive. But yeah, we use denial to protect ourselves from looking at really hard things. So sometimes things about ourselves are really hard to look at. Betrayed.
How did you grab denial out of that so quickly?
Fear of changing. Denial is that protection.
So you grabbed the words fear of changing and then you grabbed denial.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that?
I'm just noticing that you made that jump and just wanted to see how it happened.
Yeah. Fear of changing. I think when change is easy and we look at it and we go, oh yeah, I want to change. And we actually move forward with the change. There's no level of denial with that. When there's a lot of fear, and I'm not saying there has to be denial, but I see it a lot, especially when we're working with sexual acting out or sexual addiction. The denial runs pretty rampant. And yeah, so I'm gonna see if I can find that, Luke, and I'll let you just tackle the first question.
Okay. I'm gonna save the first one for you. Okay, so second one says, what do I do if my partner is ready to give up on life and a relationship? On and our relationship? And I guess I just want to start with like empathy. And I want to give like a lot of solemn, like deep connection to the person that put this, and anybody who's in that spot that is giving up, whether especially either person that's giving up on a relationship or life, like to the extent of pain that you have to be in a space to give up on either of those is so intense. I mean, those aren't things you just like give up on. So it's kind of like reminds me of, and if I'm going too heavy with this, I apologize, but I'm super sad thinking about how I used to judge people that dealt with suicidal ideation, that wanted to take their own life. And then I recognize, like, I don't understand their pain. And I want to speak first to the betrayed, who's the person that is watching their loved one give up, and how powerless you are in that situation, and just give a lot of love and empathy to you right now, that there's so much outside of your control. And I've watched Alana do this plenty of times when I've been in victim mentality, woe is me, or even not in victim mentality of just feeling so hopeless, like that something's going to get different. And I've watched her show up in really, really, I could tell, really connected ways to God, when she just allowed to surrender me to God and go, there's nothing I can do with him. Like, this is his journey and he's going to make the choices. And I don't know. I mean, please ask her how she was able to be that grounded when I was without hope. So, and then to the person who's, in that spot of it being that heavy because of looking at their own choices and just being in that dark, hollow hole, and recognizing, like, those are, like, if thinking about Alana and thinking about myself, well, let me talk about myself. I really, guys, this sounds mean, but I really can appreciate a good solid rock bottom for the people that I work with. And not that I want them to be in that pain, because there's so much love for them, but recognizing my rock bottoms was where some really good change happened, and hoping that nothing got in the way of that rock bottom, like people that would enable me. And if I didn't have anybody enabling me around me, and I got a chance to really feel the pain, if it didn't kill me, that it was probably going to end up, the outcome could be a good experience, could be. So anyway, yeah, just a lot of love for you, that if that's, what do you do? So let me answer the question, which I kind of already did. What do I do if my partner's ready to give up on life and our relationship? For one, please don't, please allow their rock bottoms to be their rock bottoms. And I'm so sorry and sad that that affects you in such a negative way. That's one message. And the other one is recognize what your grounded looks like. Recognize what you're connected to others and God looks like, and really just ground to that. And the women that I've seen walk in this journey, y'all are so tough. You're freaking warriors. And the hard that you have to go through and the way that you show up in that hard, it's crazy. It's amazing. Crazy in like an amazing way. So anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Alana, go ahead. Did you find anything?
Oh, yeah, I did. That was really well said, Luke. So I feel like me jumping into this denial feels like a shift of energy. And so I'm gonna read these at you. I'm sorry, I'm gonna read them, but they're so freaking good. These come from LifeStar. But primary forms of denial. So first, denial is a term we use to characterize any number of strategies or techniques human beings use to help them avoid painful realities and the uncomfortable thoughts and feelings that accompany guilt and shame. All have an inherent tendency to use denial to defend ourselves against pain and suffering. So again, all of us have an inherent tendency to do this. To use denial to defend ourselves against pain and suffering caused by obstacles, trials, and problems that are a natural part of life. So rationalizing, which is giving what appears to be a good reason for an unacceptable or irrational behavior. Your excuses may seem so reasonable that you may believe them yourself. And I love that last line. Your excuses may seem so reasonable, you may believe them yourself. See that a lot. Minimizing, reducing serious problems and behaviors to make them seem less important, so they become insignificant and unworthy of any real attention. Comparing, shifting attention to someone else in order to avoid any responsibility or blame and to justify behavior. Uniqueness, making up reasons that you are special or different from others. Many addicts demonstrate uniqueness by acknowledging that therapy is fine for others, but they don't know that it will work for them. Also, side note, I see uniqueness a lot in a group. Guys will show up for the first time, and women too, but especially those who struggle with addiction show up at like, oh, I'm not like these other guys. That's a form of denial. Creating a distraction, avoiding responsibility by being the center of attention and by clowning around and making others laugh. Or using anger to intimidate and frighten, or shocking others with outrageous language or stories. Omitting, avoiding attention by manipulating a conversation so that you can change or ignore an uncomfortable subject or leave out important pieces of information. I have like 5 more. Blaming, taking away responsibility from yourself and placing it on others. Convincing yourself that it's not your fault and making up elaborate reasons to blame other people and circumstances. Compliance, pretending to do what others want or expect of you just to get them off of your back. This was Luke's favorite one. I laugh out of pain because this for years was this compliance of saying, I'll do whatever you want me to do, and then not doing it. And it's a form of denial.
I never do that anymore, ever.
Mhm.
Perfect.
You got through the motions of getting help, but never really make a full commitment. This is all still under compliance. By pretending to be submissive, apologizing for your lack of success, and then recommitting all over again, you can keep from ever really facing reality. So with this one, super important that partners learn what the patterns are so they can step out of the patterns. And then we ourselves, if we're doing this, that we practice stepping out of these patterns. Intellectualizing, avoiding feelings and numbing out by intellectualizing everything, getting lost in irrelevant questions and meaningless details, creating airs of intellectual superiority to distance yourself from others, and using intelligence as a weapon. Hopelessness and helplessness, acting like a victim of circumstance with no choice or ability to affect your environment. You are sure that nothing will work, so why even try? And the last one, manipulating, attempting to exploit and dominate others by lying, telling secrets, intimidating, creating guilt, and making your love and attention conditional on what you want in exchange from others. So it's a lot there, but I will tell you, all of these are used to protect sexual acting out and addiction. So getting really clear with what we do and what's happening with ourselves is the only way that we can really change our behavior, is when we're actually aware that we're doing it.
Question came in. Can I get a copy of that list?
Yeah. It's Life Stars. I don't even know where I came across it. I don't know how I would get it to people. Oh, you know what? I can have Vanessa send it out. If you've registered for this recording, I can send that out with Vanessa and just make it really clear. It's not chooses. It belongs to Lifestar, but I will totally send that out with this recording.
Cool. Let's tackle this one so it gets hit. Okay, Alana, I'll throw this for you and then I'll comment at the end. How do you deal with severe body image issues after betrayal? We're 2 years out and doing fairly well in our marriage, but I still am severely embarrassed by my body in front of my husband. I've had kids and don't look anything like I imagine he was looking at.
I have a big sigh with that one. Because yes, like I've felt that, I've been there. And it's such a journey working through that. And I'll just tell you, I wanted so bad my body image stuff to only be about Luke, and I wanted him to fix it, and I wanted him to be the problem. And the reality was, and is for me and most people, that our body issues come from layers and layers of stuff. Like, did Luke's stuff, when it came out, completely exasperate what was already there within me? Absolutely. And that is where his impact lies. And those were things that were already in me to some level that got exasperated. And the reality is he couldn't fix it for me. I wanted him to. And so I really had to do a lot of work. And I hate to say this, but this was like years journey work. And some days still comes up today. Some days I'm like, I'm great. Like, I couldn't care less, and he's going to love me or not, depending on how I look. And that's his issue. And other days that insecurity pops in, and it's, do you love me? Am I attractive enough? Do I compete against these things that you have seen? Do I hold your attraction? One thing for me was, I'm going to get older every year. And these people out there will always stay young in image or on video. And how will I compete with that? That felt so big and so daunting and overwhelming. So my work really was about learning how to first learning and recognizing in which ways I was attaching my worth and my value to his choices. I had to start separating those. And in the beginning, it felt impossible. Like, it felt like they were so intertwined that there was no unraveling them. There was, it was such a hard, complicated process, but really just separating my value of him, and also learning to love myself and my body no matter what, so I could accept any love or acceptance of that he had towards me, because all of it was damaged. The way I saw myself, the way I loved myself was damaged. The way I could believe him or not believe him and the way he saw me was damaged. Where my brain went and what I imagined he wanted, and knew things that he went after and was attracted to, and it wasn't me. Like, all of that caused so much extensive damage. Two books actually that I found helpful. One was More Than a Body by, somebody help me put it in the chat, because I know multiple women in the recovery circles have read this one. More Than a Body. It's by two sisters. They're twins. Can't think of their name.
I'm picturing people like scrambling to try to
whoever gets it first. I could Google it, but thank you. Yes, Valerie for the win. Lexi Kite is one of them. Lexi and something. They're both Kite, or because they're twins. Anyway, that was a helpful book. That helped me unravel that there was multiple layers involved around the body issues. And then Lindsay, yes, Lindsay, thank you. And the other one was called So Long Insecurity, You've Been a Bad Friend to Me. And if you're not religious, that's not the book for you. The second one, So Long Insecurity, she's a pastor, and she talks about that insecurity and talks about some of the most insecure people she's ever met were actually these absolutely gorgeous, rich women married to professional athletes, that they were the most insecure, hands down women she had ever met. They had the beauty, they had the money, they had the body, and they were still so insecure. And so she talks about how that insecurity doesn't just because you are attractive or aren't attractive, you can still love your body separate of all of that. And she takes it through a religious lens of being able to turn to God and help find your worth and value in that way. So hopefully those are a few resources that can help with that. And that's just a hard one.
Tell us, if you wouldn't mind, tell us things that are helpful for a husband to do and not helpful for a husband to do when there's, embarrassment around the body.
It varies. It depends by person to person. So the best thing you can do is respect your wife or your partner with what she needs. Like, there was times where it was really helpful to hear that I am beautiful and that I am wanted. And there was other times where do not mention a word about it. And learning to focus not on her body, especially where we've had sexual acting out and sexual addiction. One thing I remember Luke and we worked on was, don't give me compliments about my body. Give me compliments about me, about who I am, because I'm separate of my body. So compliments of, wow, the way you were able to describe that tonight in Road to Recovery was really good, like that. Or, I am really attracted to your intelligence. I'm really loving how kind you were to our kids when that happened. Those type of compliments about who she is as a person, separate of her body, that can be really healing too. Do you have any suggestions with that, Luke? Because obviously you were on the other side trying to help me heal through this. What did you find that was helpful and not helpful?
Oh, I learned so many bad ways of things not to do. I remember right away, this is embarrassing, telling Alana that right away after, remember that she was, super, I was so beautiful and so attracted to her. And she's like, what are you talking about?
You used to say you are the most beautiful woman in the world. And that was so triggering to me.
It's embarrassing. And the funny thing is it was after everything came out. So I was like, okay, I want to save my marriage. And I believe that. But how stupid that sounded. I wasn't stupid, but it sounded stupid. And just being insensitive to what I'd actually done. So, the thing I would encourage, which sounds crazy, Alana said, it depends. So what does it mean if it depends, men? It means you got to have a conversation around it, invite the conversation. And then we would laugh if we were in group about this, because we'd be like, who in the world would do that, especially on a good day? Because that's just going to turn into a blow up. Like, no, that's the best. Like, that's the outcome can be really solid if you can lean into that conversation, maybe way later. But hey, Alana, like, so this is what I've recognized and this is what I've seen. The body issues, like I've gotten this wrong sometimes, telling you you're beautiful. Like what's helpful, what's not helpful. And then I have my piece of paper and my pen out. So I'm actually listening and actively listening, and I'm asking questions. And then in dealing with my attacks, when I hear her say my attacks in my own brain, when she says something like, well, Luke, it depends on the day. And I'm like, what do you mean it depends on the day? Like, what am I supposed to do with that? And then go like, okay, wait, hold on. This is a human experience. Like, just listen, ask questions. What does depends mean? What does depends on the day? And getting curious. So that's it. And again, ladies, let me just speak to you for a second. The majority of the time, the reason men don't bring it up is because he's having a good day with you and he doesn't want a bad day. And I'm constantly trying to remind them that please ask these questions on a good day, even if it ruins the day, because that shows you that he's committed to things getting better, when he's willing to take times when they're going good to learn more about you and to learn more about recovery. So
can you talk for just a minute, Luke, on this concept of the partner who has betrayed, of just opening your mouth? Because so often I see that default of that shutting the mouth, going quiet, or staying in your head, or not rocking the boat, and the damage that can come from that, and the feelings of additional betrayal or abandonment that can come from that. Can you talk about, just really briefly, because I know we're almost at time, but can you talk about just how or why the benefit of men opening up their mouth and leaning into this discomfort, why that's important?
yeah. It's my constant journey to remember that all of my life I've self-protected. All of my life I self-protected. The way I self-protect is I keep inside me, brain, heart, away from people, because I'm afraid if they see my brain, I'm afraid if they see my heart, they will leave me. They will abandon me. Well, my wife's suffering from that same thing because of my choices. So what I do is I lean into this space, and I'm definitely not perfect at it. Still really working on this stuff, y'all, of sharing what's inside of my brain, even if I don't have anything to say. So I remember us driving down the road the other day and telling Alana, like, I don't know what I want. I don't know what to say right now, but I really desperately want to communicate with you, but I don't know what to say. I remember her going like, it's so nice to hear you say that, because the silence, I feel abandoned in the silence. So, and so that takes a ton of vulnerability from the person who did the betraying, to show up and let what's on the brain, especially when they're just lacking the words to say, to just share anything. And if what happens in that conversation is your wife shares with you pain, I would invite you to have a reframe on that pain, to not view that as a bad thing, to not view that as like, oh, that means everything went sideways and I shouldn't have done that. I'd like you to reframe it that our relationship is still alive because she's still sharing with me. She's still open to sharing pain with me. If she stops sharing pain with me and she's still in pain, that's problematic. So if she's still willing to share pain, we still have something going for us, and considering it a blessing, a gratitude. Alana, we should probably wrap it up unless you got anything on saying on that.
Well, just hopefully too, that means that you have created some level of safety, that she feels like she can share her pain with you. And so that can mean that you are doing something right, enough right, to make space for her pain. And if that pain has been dammed up for a long time, it may come rushing out, but it won't continue forever. And so just leaning in and making space for that. Absolutely. And I'll just put a plug. We have talked about holding her pain or holding your partner's pain in some of our past months. So go back and listen to them if you haven't listened to past months. I believe that they are all on YouTube. So you can go access them there. Any past months, it usually takes us a couple of weeks to get them up.
Oh, and do you want to shamelessly, and I'll push you to do it, plug your group for men? Or did it fill?
My group is for women.
Oh, it's for women. I apologize.
Yeah, no. I have a group coming up in January. It's for women who are in a place who have done enough recovery work and their partner has done enough recovery work where there's enough safety that they feel like it's time to start leaning back in relationally, but they're really struggling doing that there's parts of them that are scared and holding back. And I don't know how, and I don't know when, or I don't know what to do. And so again, both partners are working and there's been enough safety that you're ready to start leaning in. We have a group that's starting for that. It's called Leaning In, chooserecoveryservices.com. So that will start in January. And I'm excited about that. That was a really, really hard stage for me. It was a few years into my recovery work. And I remember I gave this analogy to one of my groups the other day. Is I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff and I was like, I had to jump. Like I knew I was ready to start leaning into the relationship, but I didn't know if I was going to crash and fall and die. I didn't know if Luke would catch me. I didn't know if God would catch me. I didn't know if I'd get these wings and I didn't know. And I sat on that ledge for months, terrified. And so we're going to just talk about and work through and process some tools to help lean in as you're working through that really scary phase.
Yeah. And if you're a husband, please don't encourage your wife to take that class because you really want to see her lean in. That'd be a bad etiquette. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you for showing up tonight. Hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. And if you didn't, if it was filled with pain, our hearts are there with you too. Recognize the holidays are really, really, really hard, especially if this is your first time through the holidays. So again, same thing, so much love, and you're not alone. Please reach out to us. We have wonderful people in this community that are adequately prepared to serve you. So please do not do it alone. All right, everybody, have a good night, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.